The whisper. In ancient Rome, at the height of a general's greatest victory, as the crowds roared, and flowers fell from rooftops, and the whole empire celebrated his triumph, there was a slave, standing directly behind the general, close enough to whisper, and while the whole world cheered, the slave leaned forward, and said just 3 words, Memento Mori. Remember, you will die. Most people hear those words and flinch. They hear death. They feel darkness. They think, why would I want to remember that? And that flinch, that immediate recoil from the thought of your own death, is precisely why the Romans used a slave to say it. Because the mind will do anything to avoid this truth. It will stay busy. It will stay distracted. It will scroll and plan and consume and perform. Anything. To avoid the one fact that changes everything. Memento Mori is not 2 Latin words. It is a practice, a philosophy, a weapon, used by generals, emperors, slaves, monks, samurai, and billionaires, across 2,000 years of human history, not to make life feel smaller, to make it feel enormously, urgently real. The Romans understood something we have forgotten in the age of notifications and Netflix. A life lived without awareness of its end is not really a life lived at all. It is a drift, a delay, a long, comfortable sleep from which most people never fully wake. Let's understand why the Romans designed this ritual. When a general won a great military victory, Rome celebrated with a ceremony called the Triumphus, the most spectacular public event the ancient world had to offer. The general rode through the city in a golden chariot. Thousands cheered. Music played. Laurel wreaths were thrown. He was treated in that moment like a god. And Rome had seen what happened to men who started to believe it. They stopped leading. They started ruling. They stopped serving. They started taking. They became the thing they had fought against. So they built the antidote into the ceremony itself. A slave, the lowest rank in Roman society, stood in the chariot of the highest man in the empire, and whispered throughout the entire procession, Respice posti. Look behind you. Hominum tiesi memento. Remember that you are mortal. Memento mori. Remember you will die. Not once. Not twice. For the entire procession. The greatest achievement of your life. And a voice in your ear, reminding you it means nothing in the face of death. Not to destroy the achievement. To keep you human while you held it. For decades, psychologists assumed that thinking about death was harmful. That it caused anxiety, paralysis, fear. That the healthy mind avoided such thoughts. They were wrong. In 1986, 3 psychologists, Greenberg, Piszczynski, and Solomon, published a theory that would be tested across more than 1,500 scientific studies. They called it terror management theory. And what they discovered turned conventional psychology on its head. Yes, awareness of death initially creates anxiety. That part was expected. But what happened after the anxiety was remarkable. When people were gently brought into contact with their own mortality, through reflection, through journaling, through quiet contemplation, something shifted. They began to prioritize relationships over status. They chose meaningful work over high-paying work. They reported higher life satisfaction. They became more compassionate, more creative, more courageous. But here is the crucial distinction the research revealed. Death framed as a threat creates defensiveness. Death framed as a clarifier creates authenticity. The Romans knew this 2,000 years before the data existed. The slave's whisper wasn't a threat. It was a reminder that cut through every illusion, and left only what was real. And what is real? This moment, this choice, this day. In 2005, one of the most powerful men in the modern world stood before Stanford University's graduating class. Steve Jobs, the man who built Apple from a garage into an empire, had just been diagnosed with pancreatic cancer. He had stared into his own death, and survived. And what did he choose to speak about? Not innovation, not design, not business. He spoke about mortality. He said, "Remembering that I'll be dead soon is the most important tool I've ever encountered to help me make the big choices in life." Almost everything, all external expectations, all pride, all fear of embarrassment or failure, these things just fall away in the face of death. He didn't say this to be dark. He said it because he had discovered what the Romans discovered, what Marcus Aurelius discovered, what every great mind across 2 millennia has eventually discovered. Death is the only alarm clock that cannot be snoozed. And the people who hear it clearly, who let it wake them completely, they stop living for the opinion of people they don't respect. They stop spending years on paths they never chose. They stop waiting. Because waiting, once you truly understand Memento Mori, is no longer an option. 2,000 years ago, the Roman philosopher Seneca, one of the wealthiest, most powerful men of his era, wrote a letter that has never stopped being true. He wrote, "Let us prepare our minds as if we'd come to the very end of life. Let us postpone nothing. Let us balance life's books each day. The one who puts the finishing touches on their life each day is never short of time." Read that again. The one who puts finishing touches on their life each day is never short of time. Not because they live longer, but because they waste less. In Rome there is a place called the Capuchin Crypt, a series of underground chapels beneath a church, built by Capuchin monks between 1631 and 1870. The walls, the ceilings, the arches, are decorated entirely with the bones of 4,000 monks. Not as horror, as philosophy. Above the entrance is a single sentence. "What you are now we used to be. What we are now you will be." The monks didn't build that to frighten the living. They built it so the living would stop sleepwalking. So they would walk back into the world, above ground, in sunlight, and treat each hour like the gift it actually is. This is not just a Roman idea. Every civilization that thought deeply about how to live arrived at the same place. The Japanese samurai accepted death daily, not to become reckless, to become present. The Bhutanese say, to be a happy person, contemplate death 5 times daily. They are consistently one of the happiest nations on earth. In Buddhism, Maranasati, death awareness, same practice, different name. Every tradition, every continent, every century, the same answer. The ones who lived most fully forgot least often that they would die. There is a question, the oldest, the most avoided. If you knew you had 1 year left to live, would you still spend it the way you're spending it now? Would the job still be worth it? Would the arguments still matter? Would the dream you've been almost ready to start remain unstarted? The answer is no. Memento Mori is not a philosophy to admire. It is an instruction. The fear of death is worse than death itself. The fear of failure is worse than failing. Face it directly, and every fear strips down to what it actually is. Noise. Distractions between you and the life already waiting for you. The Romans had a slave to whisper it. Marcus Aurelius wrote it every morning. Steve Jobs asked himself daily, "If today were my last, would I still do what I'm about to do?" You don't need a slave. You don't need a crypt of bones. Just remember, once a day, that this moment, this breath, this opportunity, is not guaranteed tomorrow. Memento Mori was never about death. It was always about life. The fire is burning right now. Most people let it go cold, assuming they had time to tend it later. Memento Mori. Remember you will die. Now live like it. Drop one word in the comments that this video made you feel. Then subscribe, because this channel is built for people who actually want to think.